JR, Halloween's over, man.
It's never over.
It is. It's over. How many miles you put on that Peloton back there?
Oh man, shoot, the pedals are just falling off. They're so used.
Same for ours, man. Anyway, what's going on, all you fishing freaks out there, Facebook Live and YouTube Live land? We have a banger of an episode for you today. We're going to be talking to Kyle Weisenburger, who is a semi-local hammer to me and JR. And if you're in Ohio, he's probably pretty close to you at some point, up around the Lima area, and is representing Freedom Outdoors. And here in just a minute, we are going to get started with that. But tonight's episode brought to you by Bombshells and Ales, Ashland, Kentucky. Great food. They just opened up axe throwing. They got some beer and stuff there. I would probably refrain drinking the beer and throwing the axes.
I'm terrible at it, dude. I've tried. I'm so bad at axe throwing.
That's right. Anyway, with that, we got about really quick intro here, and you guys know what to do after that. We're going to bring Kyle on. We're going to pick his brain and try to become a better angler. So here in about a minute, we'll bring him on and see what's up.
Gotta get your arms way up in a cast and set the hook on smallmouth bass, and then you'll understand. Gotta get your hands on a Shimano reel and a G-Loomis right. I bet you like what you feel. Step on the deck and give it a whirl. Hello, welcome to my world.
That's right. Welcome to my world. You guys know what's up. My name is Tyler Waller, and on the other side of the screen we have
J.R. White, what's happening?
That's right. JR's wearing his Halloween shirt. I was telling him Halloween is over. Before we bring Kyle on, what I'd like for you to do, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook especially, go down there and hit that share button. Share this out to everybody. Again, tell a white lie. Just be like, these guys know what they're talking about. Let's face it, we don't.
They're so funny and clever and handsome.
What's up, Larry Slack? Without further ado, we're going to bring on Kyle Weisenburger here, who's a semi-local hammer to us, who's going to talk fishing, hopefully teach us something about it. So without further ado, let's introduce Mr. Kyle Weisenburger. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Not too bad. Mark Shannon.
Man.
What's up, Mark? How you doing, buddy? So, Kyle, I know you a little bit. JR knows you zero. And the people out there, they know you a little bit too, because we had a bunch of people sharing your stuff. So you made a decent impression on a lot of people. So give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been kind of fishing since about 2007 or 8 when I first kind of got into it, mainly in the Ohio area. And each year just kind of, pecked away at the sport a little bit and improved my skills. And, eventually got to where I kind of got to, fishing the regional stuff. And now I've been doing the national stuff for about maybe 6 or 7 years. And, I love it. I'm made up with it. And I just, this season just ended at the Potomac River about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I'm already excited and ready to get back at it for 2024.
Yep. So you mentioned there when we were talking before the show, you mentioned that you finally made up your mind of what you're going to fish next year. And I think that's kind of like where we're at right now for myself as well. I think I'm going to fish the co-angler division of the FLW the Toyota series. So what series are you fishing next year?
Well, I've kind of decided this year I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a different path. I'm going to do the Bass Opens for 2024. I'm also going to do the Buckeye division of the MLF BFLs and kind of go that route. I just felt with the Bass Opens, there's 9 events, and it just gives me a little bit of a longer season, a little bit of a better chance to try to stay consistent and try to get in that top 9, to try to get, promoted up to the, the elite series. So, I've had a lot of it on my mind, which way to go. And, I've spent my whole life with MLF pretty much. And I'm still going to fish a lot of events across, their circuits as well. I'll probably jump in some Toyota series, maybe if schedules align. But yeah, we're going to kind of mix it up a little bit for 2024.
That's awesome, man. So, I think that's the way, all these events kind of have us pigeonholed into like having to choose, and that kind of stinks a lot of times. But it's I've had a lot of like, I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's not really anger. I don't want to put that in it, but when BASS put the stranglehold on people like myself, a weekend angler that trying to make the Bassmaster Classic, when they said that you had to fish like all 9 events, like it was like an absolute 1-2 punch to like people like myself. Like, I think you can fish 2 in a division and win one of them and still make it to the Classic, but it's still crazy. Like, that you go there and you compete against some of the best anglers on the planet and you outshine those guys. It may be your one day only that you catch the biggest fish you've ever caught in your life, and then you win that tournament. And unless you're still shelling out that money to go, like, you don't even have to fish a tournament as long as you pay your entry fee for those things, then they'll let you into the Classic. But I think that the Bassmaster Classic for everybody is, it is like the end all be all. It's like the Super Bowl of bass fishing. We had Matt Messer on a couple weeks ago, who is a local guy from our area, from Inez, Kentucky, who just qualified for the Bassmaster Classic, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I just got my booger man buzzbaits in. Speaking of him,
yeah, Matt hooked him up. He's like, "Hey, you got to do this," and JR bought it. So,
man.
The thing about, somebody said something about the other day. We were talking about the live scope before he come on here, forward facing sonar. I told you I was having a conversation with Kyle here this past weekend. I had a 4-day weekend from work. I go back to work tomorrow, but I went down to Del Hollow for 4 days, and I don't have forward facing sonar, and I absolutely got my rear end kicked. And it's just one of those lakes where you got to have it to catch fish, which is weird. But somebody commented on our live last week, and it really struck me funny. But I've been thinking about it lately. He said he's been waiting for a co-angler to show up with an ice fishing rig for forward-facing sonar. And I was like, dude, like, why has no one ever done this? Like, was there rules against it? Like,
I bet they have.
I mean, you just show up and, like, strap that baby on somebody's new Camus and be like, look, I too can play at this game.
Hey, lithium batteries, man, they don't weigh that much.
Yeah. I don't know. So, I noticed that they gave they released the BASS Opens. Is there any place that you're like, one of them is at St. Clair, correct?
Right. Yeah. St. Clair's, I think the 3rd to last one, maybe 4th to last one. It's later in the season.
Yeah. Is there any of them that you're like, that you're looking forward to more than others?
Yeah. And that was part of my decision. I was kind of on the fence which way to go. And I kind of just eventually sat down and just looked at the schedule. And was like, which schedule to me gives me the best chance, with the way that I like to fish. And we kick off at Okeechobee, and, that's one of my favorite lakes. So that's one right off the bat that I'm really excited to get back to. And that'll be like 1st of February. And then there's a few others like La Crosse, Wisconsin, Mississippi River, Santee Cooper, just a lot of lakes I can kind of fish my shallow game and fish the way that I like to fish, my strengths. But like you were mentioning, like the live scope deal and, forward facing sonar, that's something I'm pecking away at. And I continually am trying to improve my skills. And there's definitely going to be tournaments that I'm going to have to, apply that technology and, survive with it. So.
Yeah. So I fish Lake St. Clair like 6 or 7 times a year. It's one of my absolute favorite fishing holes on the planet. I go there a lot, and I feel like that I could compete in a tournament with like weekend anglers. But you get somebody like Jay Lee or Jacob Wheeler or these guys. I'm a technology teacher at high school, so I'm like really good with technology. So the forward facing sonar doesn't bother me. Like it doesn't like scare me by any means. But if you could pull up on a school of fish, and the way forward facing sonar is, just like at Del Hollow this past weekend, I was fishing stuff that I thought would hold fish, not knowing if there was fish there. And I think it's a game changer to be able to pull up on stuff that, we've been fishing since we've been, 8 years old when we go fishing or whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, there should be a bass laying right there on that log. But if you can pull up on there and just scan it and be like, there's no fish there, and be able to move on, like how much time have we wasted over our years as anglers, just fishing because we think there would be fish there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's completely changed it. I mean, you can pull into, a drain and a lot of these like lakes where you're catching fish, off the bank in the middle of the channels and stuff, and basically put your forward facing sonar down, pan it across there. If you don't see anything, you just pulling your trolling motor up and running further back in, or to the next pocket with in the drain. And back in the day, you would pull up there and you would have to at least make casts, run over a little bit of your 2D sonar just to see if the bait's there. And now it's just you can really speed up your efficiency by using that technology, if you're good with it, but there's certain guys that are so good with it already. And the learning curve for me is continually getting better, but as I'm getting better, so are they. So, it's going to come down to just really having to, devote the time and effort into it, and the belief of, that it's what you see down there. I find it so many times that I see the fish and I get frustrated because I just cannot. They'll follow my bait, and you can't always catch them, and you just get to that, like, it's almost when you're like sight fishing for a spawning fish, like how much time do you spend, seesawing with, do I stay or go, or like what do I do different? And if you would have just not gotten a bite, not having the forward facing sonar, you would have moved on to a school fish that may have been active that hasn't been pressured, something like that. So it's an interesting tool, but you still have to know how to use it and apply it.
Yeah, the right. Player event for MLF this year, they talked a lot about that very exact subject. Having these guys that are excellent with forward-facing sonar, like Alton Jones Jr. and Jacob Wheeler, and these guys are incredible at not only seeing the way that the fish are set up, but also how they're reacting to a bait. So it's scary how good they are.
Yeah. So, and it's not just forward facing sonar. For me, what you're talking about there is seeing fish and not being able to catch them. I'll show you just a picture I took from my Humminbird this weekend. It's not an actual screenshot from Humminbird. I wish I would have done that, but I just took a picture on my phone. But I was down there, and 30 foot at Del Hollow is shallow. And I knew that going in, but I also didn't know like how much it would play into it. But if you look here, this is just a screenshot. If I can zoom in here, these are obviously giant bait balls, and you can see fish just littered all over underneath that thing. Like, they're everywhere. I threw everything under the sun. I threw drop shots, jigs, swim baits, Demiki rigs. I threw A-rigs. I threw everything I could possibly throw here, and still couldn't get them to bite anything. But I think the worst part of all that is that you see those fish, but there's no way to tell what kind of fish those are, right?
Right. And that's where some of those guys that are really good with it, they can see by the size, they can see how they're relating to the bait, if they're in a mood that's feeding or not feeding. And, they just pick up on that because they've gotten so good with it that they're just so much more efficient. We would sit there spending an hour trying to catch those fish, and maybe they're just inactive, or maybe they're not even bass. I mean, you can assume by how they're set up, a certain way with their orientation if they're bass, but there's just a big learning curve to it.
Yeah, and one of the things that Kyle Malone, my best friend, and I were talking about it is he was fishing BFL, the regional down there at Del Hollow, was there a couple weeks ago, and he's like, man, you could tell the difference between a largemouth and a smallmouth on forward facing immediately. He said, because you would throw anything you could, anything you wanted to in that bait ball with those fish underneath it, and he said those smallmouth would immediately come up and like it was just going to absolutely crush that bait and follow that bait and they may go 40 feet from that bait ball all the way to the bottom, chasing that bait all the way to the bottom, and then they just wouldn't eat it. He said, now a largemouth, if you caught one of those, they would be big. There would be, one or two smallmouth. There might be 12 largemouth. And he said, unless you got that bait like right in the middle of those fish, they weren't eating it. So he's like, stuff like that is kind of easy to pick up on. But, I like Humminbird, but I wish, like, everybody keeps asking me what I want to do for forward-facing sonar. I feel like that Garmin has the market share wrapped up for the nicest one, and then I think it's probably Lowrance after that, and then Humminbird is like not even third place. They're like 27th place in their forward facing stuff right now. So I'm hoping in the next few, months or throughout the first of the year, they come out with a new version of their Mega Live, which I'm really excited to get, but I don't want to put another graph on my boat or another company's graph because, again, I have two 15-inch Solix on my boat right now, which is probably way overkill because, if you don't need a 15-inch Solix if you're fishing in 8 inches of water.
Right.
Yep. So recently I started a new YouTube series talking about being a consumer for the bass boat world. Right now I'm running a 2006 Stratus 201 Pro XL with it's a 2006 Evinrude E-Tech 250. It has a Bob's jack plate on it from the factory. Whoever bought my boat initially, decked it out. From what I understand, it was a rich fellow that owned a big company, and he bought a new boat every year. And like when I bought the boat, and I think it was 2016 I bought it, so it was 10 years old and only had 90 hours on the boat in 10 years. And that was after two other people owning it. I'm the fourth owner of this boat. But, I'm kind of in the market right now, and I know you run a Camus from Freedom Outdoors. I would say, quote me, correct me if I'm wrong here. I'd imagine you probably have the opportunity to run whatever boat that Scott offers there, whether that be a Nitro or a Ranger or what have you. Why did you choose Camus? Because the reason I'm asking you this is because I just shot a video the other day about Camus. So it wasn't that I chose that boat to start with. It was just luck would have it that it was there and I really liked them. But why did you choose the Camus over other brands?
Well, Camus was one of those brands that kind of was getting hot, coming out, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And I had an opportunity, to run a 21 footer. So that would have been about 4 years ago, and just kind of went with it, ran that Camus, and I ran that 21 foot Camus that whole season. I love the boat, but I've always been about a 20 foot has always been my ideal boat. I like to get in a lot of tight areas, get behind docks. So the last 3 seasons, I basically ran the CX20, the 20 foot Camus. And basically, to answer your question, once I kind of just by chance went into the Camus the first year, I just really liked the quality of the boat. It's well made. There's a lot of little things that Camus does that just kind of are above and beyond little other things, just inconveniences that some other boats have in my mind. And it's just, just the trailer, that's just one thing just to bring up, like the trailer. Like I travel probably 15 to 20,000 miles a year on the highways, and a good trailer goes a long way. You're not pulling over with bearing issues, hub issues, things like that. I've ran for 4 years, 4 different boats, and I have yet to really have any trailer issue whatsoever with all the miles I put on. So just something like that, just a company putting a little bit more money in a trailer that's, going to get the angler that puts the miles on, the road like I do, it holds up, and, I've made some tweaks with some of the upgrades as far as what I've ran on the boats, but to me, the CX20 has by far been like the best boat that I have ever been able to operate as far as my favorite, model and just how it runs. It runs rough water really good for being a 20 foot boat. It drafts shallow water. I'm a super shallow guy, and I can get in, shallow water just with the best of them. And just like the sea deck flooring is another thing. You fish in every element there is known to man: rain, snow, sleet. The carpet in the floor of a boat always gets wet, and then you got to get fans on it, dry it out. They have sea deck, and a lot of the flooring, they got it in the rod lockers. So there's just those little things like that. Just make the rust of your hooks, things like that. The compartments are so much easier to dry when you have thousands of dollars in your rod compartments and tackle compartments, So, and I'll be running a CX20 for this upcoming season too. So, Camus just been a boat that I've started running that I know the ins and outs of it, and I've been happy with them. So I'm going to stay with it.
Yeah, some of the cool things that I thought, and again, so just so if you guys are just now joining us, I have started a new series on YouTube talking about, buying a new boat here soon, and it may be a year down the road or whatever. But I looked at a Camus the other day, and I think some of the cool things that I like about Camus, that a lot of, like you said, the sea deck flooring is amazing. I like that there's no carpet in the rod lockers. And there's a lot of boat manufacturers doing this also, so it's not just Camus, but the remote drain plug is a game changer. I'm going to put one on my boat here soon. There's a lot of things, for a 20-foot, and the boat that I reviewed the other day was the CX20. But somebody asked me the other day when I was at the tackle box, and I never really thought about it. First off, Earl Bentz is the one that designed that boat, which we all know Triton as Earl Bentz's baby back in the day, and he's branched off and created Camus. And one of the selling points about Camus is the fact that they have the gas tank that runs, vertically, or I guess parallel to the bow and stern, right down the center of the boat.
Right.
How do you service those things?
I've never had an issue, so I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to get in there in some way or fashion.
I mean, you got to figure that the gas tank. So I guess I'm novice when it comes to this. Being fuel injected, the new most all boat motors are fuel injected, I would imagine, newer ones that you can get. So I wonder if they're going to have is the fuel pump on the engine? So there's really no need to get to the tank, because plastic gas tanks are not going to go bad. The only thing that you could probably ever have to replace would be a fuel sending unit for like a gas gauge and a fuel pump. But if the fuel pump's attached to the motor, I don't see why you would have to ever get there. But that was one of my major concerns when he asked me. Is like, shoot, man, I don't even know. Maybe it's something I need to do some research, because you got to figure Earl Bentz, being the guy that he is, put that in there but you got to understand that's, it's not field replaceable units, but you would have to, you got to think that this boat, if it were me buying it, that's a one and done for me. Hopefully that I buy that boat and I run off into the sunset with that thing 20 years, right, 25 years down the road, when fuel lines start failing and all that other stuff. That was one of my major concerns. So I got to do some research, try to figure out what that is. But that is, it's not even really a downfall in my eyes, but that's something that I need to do some research on there. So maybe you could figure that out and let us know.
Right. But I do know, like, they have multiple compartments that, that pull away, which are nice. You can get to all the other pumps. I mean, any boat is hard to tackle into some of them areas, once it's in there, but like they have the trap doors where you can get to the bilge area. You can get the trap doors to the live well pumps. And I carry spare pumps with me just in case I ever need to, but the way that those are designed, you can hop right in there, pop those doors down, throw a pump in and out, and you're in and out in a short amount of time. So, but yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, so that was another big selling point for me. I love those trap doors in the bilge area that you can get to those pumps, because again, those are things that go bad. You know what I mean? You got to figure that whether it's 1 year or 10 years down the road, you're going to eventually have to replace those pumps. It's just the way it is. It's just how much you use them, what kind of stuff you're running through them. We've all been there where we're fishing 8 inches of water and we're running sand and silt and everything else through our pumps. And even though they're sealed and there's, it's just electricity running through those things, running those pumps usually, but, they do go bad. It's just the way it is. And I think that that's a game changer there for those, that area, to be able to change that stuff. And like you said, if you carry an extra pump with you, it's something you can do, especially with the interchangeable cartridges that are those pumps now, and not have to like take the fittings off or anything. Yeah, when you pull that cartridge off, you're going to have a substantial leak in your boat for a minute. But if you get that cartridge put back in there, it's literally a 5-minute fix usually.
Right. But yeah, I mean, as a tournament angler, I'm carrying every single thing that I can, and that's another thing I really like about the Camus is just the storage. The boxes behind the driver's side seat and in the passenger seat are so deep. You can put all kinds of tools in there. You can, and I may lose a couple miles an hour in the end of the day, but I feel like if I break down or I need to swap something out, I've got just about every tool that I can to get me back up and going. But, luckily I haven't had to use really any ever of my tools, but it's just peace of mind carrying them.
That's right. It's better to have it, not need it, need to not have it.
Right.
I did see that
finish wise. I mean, it's hard to beat a Camus.
Yes, I did see that somebody on a review video that I was watching on YouTube, somebody took the butt seat from the front of their boat, like their angler seat, and the whole seat fit in one of those things behind the driver's seat, which was crazy.
Yeah.
I kind of like that most of the live well system is like manual too. Less stuff to go wrong, less like if you look at Nitro now, if you look at Ranger, all these big names, they're putting like touch panels in their boats, which for me as a technology guy, I am 100% for technology. Like I love technology. I just upgraded to the new iPhone 15 Pro Max because why did I need another phone? No, but I like technology. But the effect, I'm a realist. And when you put technology around water, it fails all the time. So it's pretty,
right.
I kind of like that most of that stuff is manual, flip switch stuff. It's going to work. But I do think the fit and finish is really good on those boats. I really like the gas shocks on all the doors. I think that's a fit and finish option that you don't get a lot of times. They put that the wedge on the front of the bow, so it sets your trolling motor perpendicular to the water level as opposed to being like pointed down. Helpful for forward facing sonar. Helpful for all the sonar stuff that we're doing. So Earl and all his team have basically pulled out all the stops that and I feel like that they're priced competitively for what you get. You all hear about Nitro's trailers, how they're terrible. It seems like all brands have a downfall. Like Rangers really don't have a downfall except you're looking at $110,000 to buy one. But I think the Camus it fits in that realm of you get what you pay for.
Right. And they're starting to offer some pretty good, tournament incentives as well, as far as like the Camus cash and things like that. So, those are good for, a certain amount of time. And that's an extra way you can make some money as an angler if you do well in tournaments, as well.
For sure, man. So, well, we've talked enough about boats. Let's talk about some fishing here, man. So it's fall fishing pretty much everywhere in the world, unless you're, I don't know, somewhere down south and it's still fall, still probably a lot warmer. I got my first sunburn in November the other day being down in Tennessee, which is something we don't do here in Ohio very often. But fall fishing, if you're going to take one bait and catch fish, no matter where you're at, what are you taking for the fall?
Man, I am a buzzbait fanatic, and if I can get to that certain, time of year where I can throw a buzzbait, I'm going to go shallow and throw big buzzbait. That's to me when they get shad pushed back in pockets and you get a little wind blowing in some of them pockets, that's just how I like to fish, and that's the time of year in my mind you can get some big bites. On like a buzzbait. You can throw a spinnerbait, crankbait. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if I had one bait, I'd put a buzzbait in my hand all day long. I wish a lot of our tournaments would go later into the season. I feel like before we truly get into fall, a lot of our tournament seasons are over, and we fish in the early transition of the fall in a lot of our finishing tournaments. And that's actually a pretty tough time of year to fish. A lot of those lakes fish really tough in that, August, September time frame. But you get to that October, November, at least in this part of, our region, that's when the fish really start to group up and you can have some really good days. A lot of these guys are, and me included, are in our deer stands about this time of year, but there's some really good fish to be caught right now this time of year.
Yeah. What is your buzzbait setup?
What's that?
What's your buzzbait setup?
Well, because I like to throw buzzbaits a lot, I have about 1 million setups, and I have about every buzzbait that I've ever seen at a store I have bought thinking that, it's something that other people don't have. But a standard setup for me, probably what I just traditionally throw, you can hardly go wrong with a 3/8 ounce, just single clacker, white or black. I do a lot of tweaks to mine. I throw a lot of 1/4 ounces at certain times of the year. I'll throw bright colors at certain times of the year, but I would say if I have 2 baits on my deck, if I'm just throwing buzz baits, I'm going to have a white and a black buzz bait and just cover water. That 3/8 ounce, you can really make a good, skip cast underneath an overhanging limb. You can, make it, you can twitch it, spit water. It's not going to roll over on you. And there's just so many good brands out there that seem to work like in certain applications. Some work better in grass when you're running over top of grass. The blades don't get caught up in the grass as much. But this year I actually downsized in a couple of my big events this year. I knew a lot of these lakes were pressured, and I went to like a 1/4 ounce venom buzzbait, and I actually caught some giant fish on a really small buzzbait. I just felt like everybody else, you look around, everybody else was throwing big, loud buzzbaits, and I knew the fish were kind of in that mood where they were shallow and they wanted to feed, and that little buzzbait was just the ticket. But it's those little things you got to pick up on. Sometimes you could not get a bite going down 300 yards of bank, and you're like, how did I not get a bite? And you pick up a different buzzbait that's slightly different, and all of a sudden you can turn back around and generate bites down that bank. So it's one of those things that you just really have to stay in tune with, like, I don't know what those fish want, and be dialed into the speed, the retrieve, and just everything with it.
Yeah. Buzzbait fishing for me is obviously up there. I like a walking bait in the fall too. I throw a buzzbait on actually a crankbait rod. It's a 7-power. It's 847 CBR IMX Pro Loomis. What kind of rod and reel setup? Obviously, I'm throwing braid also. But what are you throwing those baits on?
Right. So I'm braid as well. Everything as far as buzzbait fishing to me is straight braid. I would say most of the time I'm running 40-pound braid. When I get to that like 1/4 ounce buzzbait, and I even have some buzzbaits that are lighter than that, I'll go to like 30-pound braid, still running straight braid. And traditionally I'll run like a 7-foot to 7'2" medium heavy, probably would be my standard rod for most of the buzzbaits. When I get to those lighter ones, I'll back it down a little bit to like a 7-foot medium, or like a medium heavy that's got a little bit softer tip. The key with a lot of buzzbait fish, if you throw braid, there's really no stretch. And it a lot of times is a topwater bite. So if you have a super stiff rod, sometimes I like a little bit of play in my rod. It's just like a little bit of delay, because sometimes like you'll see them eat it and you got to give them just a second before you really set that hook on them. I mean, I have pulled the hook out of a couple of really big fish that they have come up to just devour it. And I just got too excited, and you just it's one of those things you just got to let them have it, But yeah, I would say that medium heavy 7-foot, 7'2" is kind of just standard for what I throw.
Yeah, I see you over there, Smirker JR. You know what I was going to say.
I missed so many when I started fishing the buzzbait for the first time. It was hilarious. I got really excited. So it is. I love a buzzbait bite. I love a frog bite. So that's
right.
That's something. If in the fall, I love throwing a frog too. It's being a shallow water angler. Are you really into frog fishing as well?
Oh yeah. I love to frog fish. I mean, it's anything that, for me, I love fishing anything shallow, and if you can put grass around it, it's even better. We were just at the Potomac, and I didn't really figure out the frog bite, but I know some guys did, and that is a great way to generate a quality bite, is frog fishing. I love to punch. But you get me around grass, shallow water, like it's always going to have a buzzbait thrown around it, a frog going over it, and probably something punching down in it. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So JR, I wasn't calling you out. I was calling myself out. So last weekend I was fishing Yatesville, and let's see if I can speed this video up here, because
oh yeah.
It's got absolutely destroyed by a massive bass, and I as soon as he come up, dude, like I was setting the hook like I was at a catfish pond. I was like, "This is a slow day. I hadn't had much luck. All that stuff is like it was just a perfect storm. Got crushed." But as you're talking about fishing grass, there was a big grass mat there in that flat that I didn't even know was there, but I threw that walking bait, that Spook Junior, right across the top of that, and man, it ticked him off enough that he was ready to eat it and missed it by I don't know how he missed it, but he crushed it. So there's always a question that we always ask all the people we have on here, and that is kind of a bait that you always will throw and a bait that you think is overrated. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here is like, if I am told that I can only fish one bait the rest of my life, it's going to be some kind of Texas rig, probably a Zoom speed crawl, Jackal chunk crawl, and like a 3/16 ounce tungsten pegged weight with like a 4-aught Gamakatsu offset shake worm hook. That's my go-to bait. If somebody said that's the only thing, you can pick one bait to throw it the rest of your life, that would be it for me. And a bait that I think is overrated, and everybody that watches this show understands what I'm about to say. And what I think is overrated is a whopper plopper. I just can't catch fish on it. I know they have a right time, and I can't catch them. So if you had given here your two things, sorry, I got distracted there. Apparently somebody won an election here close to me because it sounded like somebody rattled my house with fireworks. But anyway, if you had one bait to only, if you were given one bait to throw the rest of your life, what would it be? Any time of the year, and what bait do you feel like is overrated?
I would have to say, and this hasn't always been like this, but probably in the last 3 or 4 years, there is a bait that I will throw all times a year, and it has saved me so many times, is a wacky worm. If I had to take one bait to any lake, I would just take like a 5-inch Bass Pro Shop Sticko or a 5-inch like Yamamoto Cinco and just throw it on a spinning rod. And I've caught big fish. I've caught numbers of fish. There's been so many tournaments when it's just saved my tail when I'd only have 2 or 3 fish and it fell at my limit, something like that. But 100% hands down a wacky worm. An overrated bait. I hate to say one because I'll say it and then I'll catch fish on it this year. But a bait that I probably underperform on more than I should is a jerk bait. And I want to get better at a jerk bait. But to me, like, I have spent a lot of money. I have an awesome selection, a tackle box of jerk baits, but I have underperformed significantly of jerk baits. And I just feel like that's a bait to me that is overrated. And I know guys catch giants and it's a great bait. I just haven't ever felt it in my heart that it's a bait that I have confidence in.
Yeah, it's a great bait. I caught a decent sized smallmouth at Del Hollow on a deep diving jerk bait. But Jared, what are you choosing?
So I changed this up, but we'll go with the overrated bait. And I know some people are going to get mad at me, but I got to say an A-rig. I don't have any confidence in an A-rig. I know there's so many people that are obsessed with them. I mean, you think about Mark Zona and how much he loves A-rigs, and then I think last week when I said my confidence is a drop shot, it still really is, but it's hard to beat a Texas rig too. But I mean, confidence wise, when things get tough, I know a lot of people use that wacky worm for that. For me, it's a drop shot with a robo worm on it.
Mm-hmm. That's a great bait.
Yeah. Man, baits, I'm a firm believer, and I've said this 100 times, baits catch more fishermen than they do fish. Yeah, it's just like stuff like, I'll go to the tackle box or Borders and be like, yeah, that bait looks great, man. It looks just like a bait fish. It's like the Berkeley call shad, right? I own 2 of them now. Been throwing the fire out of them. I'm a realist, man. I'm right here in Southern Ohio, which I like to call the armpit of America for bass fishing. So if I'm lucky, I could throw that thing for a week straight and catch one fish on it, and it's probably going to be a 14-inch fish. So I just not had the opportunity to throw it.
But that's the weird thing about so many of these baits is that there's just, there's a time and a place for them. There's a cadence to them. And once you figure that time, that whatever it is out of that bait, it's just like it's just like a whole nother bait you're throwing. I agree with the same way. Like I'll throw like glide baits. Like I have yet to figure that whole glide bait deal out, but I know I've seen fish follow it, and it's the right caliber of fish that follow that bait. So the guys that there's just little nuances to those baits. Like once you figure them out, that it can be a completely different game changer to you.
All right. Billy's on my side right there. You see a shaky head and an A-rig. All right.
Yeah. Matter of fact, speaking of A-rigs, I just released a video on my version of how to fish a shaky head. And I I wouldn't do this in a tournament, obviously, but I locked it in my hands all day at Yatesville the other day and caught like 4 fish on it. Wasn't the greatest day of fishing, but if you guys are interested in trying to learn how to fish an A or a not an A rig, but a shaky head like I do, it's out there on YouTube. But right now we're at that 40-minute mark, which we've already went over 10 minutes what I already set. So if you guys have any questions for Kyle here, drop them in the comments below. We'll give you guys about 5 minutes to get those through, and we'll stay on here long enough to answer those questions. But Kyle, I want to thank you for giving us some time of your life this evening, talking bass fishing with us, and we're really we're on your side. Hopefully you go out there and whack them in the BASS Opens next year, and hopefully we can travel to wherever the Bassmaster Classic is in 2025 and see you hoist that trophy, man.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me on, and we'll see what we can do. We just going to put our time in and put our head down and fish, and we'll see where it puts us.
That's right, man. So again, we don't have a whole lot to offer here, but if you never need anything, if you want to come back on and talk fishing, or maybe do just a rundown of your rig when you get that new rig, we can basically be live from anywhere your cell phone's at. So if you want to do a live show during a Saturday or something when you're out pre-fishing or something and showing that new Cayman CX20 off, let us know. We're always looking for people to hop on, and enjoyed having you on here. You're very knowledgeable, so we get a you grace our presence. It's definitely something we're going to enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll get that boat probably in the next 4 or 5 weeks. When I pick it up at Freedom, we'll get it rigged, and it's really only 2 months. I'll be on the road probably to my first event. I mean, that's only like 8 or 9 weeks away. So it's 2024 is right around the corner.
For sure. George says, "Have any of you guys thrown the Yamatanuki, and what are your thoughts?" I personally have not. These guys may have.
I have not either. I have thought about it, and I have heard of guys catching them on it, but I have yet to throw it.
I have not thrown them.
Yeah.
The smaller size looks like it'd be really good on a Ned rig, to be honest. The 2.5.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, on a weedless Ned, something like the Midwest Finesse weedless do-it mold that I pour all the time. Something like that, really, really good. I saw something that Alton Jones Jr. was promoting really heavily the other day. I just couldn't get into it. It basically looked like a TRD that had like a spinnerbait skirt ran through it, like in 20 different spots. He claims that he's catching fish on it there, but it's just like dog food salesman, guys. If you're selling dog food, your goal is to sell dog food, right? It's all about making money. So that's the way it goes. Let's see. John Fletcher. Jackhammer, he pulled out JR's go-to, the jackhammer, or bladed jig, not so much a jackhammer. Shaky head, man. So I feel like, and I even said in that video, that I feel like that if I am having a rough day and I'm not catching fish, I will pull out a 1/4 ounce shaky head of some sort. I like some of the screw lock on it. I like flat line ties more than the straight up and down. I just feel like that they move a lot better in the water. But I throw all kind of stuff on those things. They just catch fish, and kind of like Kyle said earlier, the wacky rig or the wacky worm is one of my go-to baits in the summertime, man. Around here, throwing like a Jackal Flick Shake 4.8 inch and a Cola collar or something that's like green pumpkin. Those two baits are going to be something that I'm not going to go without either. But if I just had to choose one, I think it would be a Texas rig, because I feel like that I can fish that in and around a lot of cover. And I also am kind of a realist that I don't want to stand there with a fishing rod in my hand like this for the rest of my life.
I don't think I really appreciated the jackhammer or, whatever, all of those types of baits until I fished it around grass. And once I fished it around grass, that's when I really saw the benefit of it.
That's right. Tony Grubbs come in with another banger there. The Blue Rock Custom Tackle 1099 jig is amazing too. Triple threat. A little spotty from Picasso, their Hulk Snatcher jig. They have the Aaron Martins. There's just so many great baits, man. Like, I have my boat would probably be a 75-mile-an-hour boat if I didn't have 500-pound of gear in it. Watermelon, red flake. Yeah, dude. Really good collar, especially for the old wacky rig. So good. But anyway, we're at that 45-minute mark, guys. I appreciate you guys joining us. In this episode of On Another Line Live, we have Mr. Kyle Weisenburger, who's going to be fishing the BASS Opens this year, as well as some Buckeye BFLs, probably, maybe some Toyota Series. So if you see him, give him a shout. Good guy. Obviously, we got him here to talk to us for 45 minutes. So again, Kyle, appreciate your time this evening. Anytime you can make it back on, where you have an open invitation, man, and I hope you go out there and smash them, and hopefully we see each other again on the tournament field here soon.
Sounds good. I appreciate both your time tonight, and just stay in touch. Thanks again.
Will do. So, guys, you guys know the routine. If you guys can, get out there and lean on them. We'll see you next time on Another Line.